Hello and welcome to The Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. Well, there's plenty of media narratives to destroy these days, and the regnant media narratives are the election is over, Joe Biden has been elected, and it is time for Donald Trump to concede and to leave the White House as quickly as possible. And in that spirit, a number of the United States' key allies, the much vaunted NATO partners, including the United States' closest ally in all of the world, and of course I mean Israel, but in addition, the United Kingdom, have all eagerly rushed to embrace Joe Biden as president-elect, the man that they will be dealing with in the next 4 years. Now, this is really rather strange because the counting still is going on in a number of states. There will undoubtedly be recounts in a number of states. Legal challenges are being filed this week. It sounds like they're going to challenge the vote count in about 10 different states. There is a lengthy constitutionally prescribed procedure that has to be followed. And one would have thought that these leaders like Monsieur Macron and Frau Merkel could have known better, given what happened in the year 2000 when the election was contested for something like 6-7 weeks. And it wasn't known until mid-December who would be president. And during that time, people held back, heads of government held back before issuing their congratulations. However, this time, I guess they're so eager to see the back of Donald Trump that they just really couldn't wait to extend their felicitations. One notable exception to all of this has been Russia. And Russia has pointedly said that it will not be extending any congratulations until the election procedure in the United States is over and or President Trump has conceded. And that seems to be the right and proper and diplomatic and mature and sophisticated way of conducting affairs. What's your take, Peter?
Well, so I don't forget, I mean, the very famous and illustrious Russiagator Michael McFaul apparently is very upset that Vladimir Putin hasn't made the call, and congratulated Joe Biden here. I don't know why someone like Michael McFaul would think that, because number one, the election isn't over. It is when the electors are seated for the Electoral College, then we'll get a determination of who the president-elect is. So Joe Biden, you're just blowing smoke, and your media friends are. Of course, that's it, okay? It's creating this narrative of inevitability, okay? There are court challenges, they're valid. That's why they're there. What I find really remarkable, it's all counterintuitive to me. The single most important person that should be banging his fist or barking at cars as he does is Joe Biden saying, let's have a recount. Let's bring in the FBI if necessary. Let's have a complete and transparent review of this election. If he did that, that would be a different story. But he's not, of course, okay, because he didn't campaign. He's not involved in this either. But he's the one. It's the country that stands to lose the most. So it should be both sides in unison. Part of American political tradition of saying, look, okay, the tallies are almost done. There's been some complaints and accusations. Let's get this cleared up as soon as possible. And let's look to the proper authorities and let's not be biased. And let's get this done with because we need a transition. That's the way it should be. But what's really interesting to me is, America's renowned allies. Why are they doing this? Yeah, sure. Maybe they want to see the backside of Donald Trump. Fair enough. Okay, that's neither here nor there for me. What is interesting to me, it's an ideological reaction. Is that these people are the princesses and princes of neoliberalism, and they want to get the compass reset, okay? How dare these elections get in the way? Oh my goodness, okay? These pesky, pesky voters, okay? And that's their whole approach, okay? Because as I've said before, democracy is not a representative exercise anymore. It is a controlled, slow burn to affirm and reaffirm and further an ideological point of view. I mean, representation, that's for rubes and plebes, okay? We know how to do it, okay? We must get the ship of state reset, okay? And we go into the glorious, radiant future. That's what this is all about.
Yes, no, there's no question. And they're quite explicit about it, that Frau Merkel and Monsieur Macron are obviously under the happy impression that everything is going to go back to the good old days. Yes, neoliberal, corporate power, shipping jobs overseas, jobs disappearing, manufacturing industry disappearing, and all of the issues that Trump, in his customary crude way, that brought up, will all be gone. I mean, it is significant that Macron made that expression, NATO is brain dead. He clearly saw the writing on the wall. He clearly finally understood that Trump was really addressing a serious issue, namely that NATO is a historic artifact, has no relevance to any of today's problems. Trump said this. The Europeans got to hope that Trump would go away. And then Macron said, well, yeah, NATO is brain dead. Now I guess they're saying, oh, well, thank God, the good old days are back again.
It's really kind of interesting because you can look at some different trends going on in Europe. And on the one hand, you see Macron making some kind of bid to be the leader of Europe. But of course, Frau Merkel has been trying to do that as well. And as long as there is a tension there of who will lead, and I wouldn't want either one to leave personally, but that's their problem to resolve. But until that tension is resolved, they're going to default to the United States. Okay, I think that's very interesting. I think the particularly the Germans see the writing on the wall too, because if you look at the entire history of the EU, it's really suited German interests. Okay, particularly the euro. The euro is a German invention here.
And it's very significant, and just to follow up on that Trump made that very argument. He actually said explicitly, the euro is a German racket. It's why the Germans are able to be so competitive in global markets.
Ask the Greeks. Ask the Greeks.
Yeah, so he actually said this. And of course, Merkel didn't appreciate it. And, no doubt, with Biden there, all that kind of talk will disappear as well, all in the spirit of NATO unity, the transatlantic alliance, and let's try and invent some new threats to justify this transatlantic gravy train.
Yeah, it's very interesting is that you'll have, we don't even need the names of these leaders because it really doesn't matter because they're representing certain class and financial and economic interests. It's like the Chancellor of Germany and the President of France, because as long as there's the American backstop to one degree or another, and the U.S. is a backstop for them as they kind of assess their future. I mean, everyone is talking about what kind of relationship Europe will have with China, and if we're going to have two internet, for example, or two OSs, okay, we'll have one led by China and one led by the United States. Where do the Europeans find themselves in that, okay? I mean, these are very serious, hard questions. Think of the European Union. Do they have a Google? Do they have an Apple? They don't, okay? And the U.S. has displaced them in that sense. But if Europe wants to be a viable power, and I'm sorry, the Cold War is over. We can go back to great power politics the way it has been from time immemorial up until 1945, okay? Because everyone is still wedded to those kind of conditions. No, the European Union is a power and it has interests, okay? And it should defend those interests. Now, during the Cold War, the United States made sweetheart trade deals all over the world: Japan, Australia, New Zealand, what would become the European Union, and it was a trade-off. Okay, we'll give you easy trade terms, but you're in our camp. Okay, and that means you buy our weaponry. That means you use our dollar, you use our financial institutions. And when we blow a whistle, you come running to help out these ridiculous, stupid wars. Okay. Now there's a reassessment of that going on here. So without imaginary thinking from the Europeans, which I think they've forgotten to think how to think, okay, they do a backstop to the US, okay? So it doesn't really matter. I mean, Trump was disruptive, okay, fine, but he did it out of national interest. I genuinely believe that. He was thinking in terms of the American national interest, and that's fine. I didn't agree with him how he did it all the time or his specific policies, but that was his inclination. Right. And I think that, the new coalition that is coming, it's coming together as a result of Trump, irrespective if he stays in office, is going to be looking at trade deals. I have to say over and over again, in 2016, trade deals was the determinant issue for many, many voters here. And Trump was the only one that talked about it, okay?
Right. And that's the whole thing.
I think it's going to be...
Because, you have to then go back, as you said, to the Cold War. And indeed, yes, the United States signed these very favorable trade terms on behalf of its supplicants, its satellite states, and it was very good for them. Germany and Japan, rose as to be economic giants in no time at all. Same thing happened to South Korea. But after a while, the United States will realize that, hey, we're losing out on all of this. We're losing jobs. Our manufacturing industry is decimated. The great days of Ford and General Motors is long gone. And Trump came along and addressed that and said, well, what are we doing here? We're losing our manufacturing base. Therefore, we are also losing our economic supremacy, all in the name of security alliances against whom? Because Russia's not our enemy. I mean, Russia was supposed to be the great bugbear during the Cold War. It isn't. And he actually said Russia really should be our friend and ally because it clearly is batting on our side. And he then identified that China is the rising economic giant. So it makes very little sense to antagonize Russia and push it into China's camp. So he raised all of these issues. And of course, the Europeans pretended to agree with him for a while. But now that the pressure from him is gone, I think we're back to the mindless Obama years.
Yeah, but with the perception that the pressure is gone, it ends up being a moral hazard, because if you don't have to think, then you won't think. Okay. And this is very, very convenient. This is kicking the can down the road. It's treading water, okay? And these are not the days to do it here at all, okay? And it's really quite tragic. I know it's just completely verboten to say it in public, but there is an entire literature devoted to why does NATO exist? I mean, I've been confronted with that and say, how could you say that? I say, a lot of people have been thinking about it since the end of the Cold War. I mean, it's not like I'm not, coming up with a unique idea. I mean, it's been argued. George F. Kennan, exactly. Probably
that's right. Even before the Cold War, I mean, even back in the 80s, when people say, well, actually, this isn't 1945. I mean, Europe is now a major economic power and it should be a major military power. I mean, the whole idea of being frightened of the Red Army in the 1980s never made very much sense. So critiques of NATO have been around for quite a while.
But see, with sending congratulations here. This is a real crisis of Europe, because they know that they have to start designing their future, because if they don't, others are going to do it. Okay, and that is something that is going to give populist movements in the EU a real shot in the arm. and also the kind of replicating of the kind of coalition that Trump has done in the United States here. I mean, this is, you know, the warnings have been sent. They're glaring. And it's time for Europe to, if it really does have military threats, it should take care of it itself.
Right,
My goodness, the European Union, population-wise and GDP-wise, is larger than the United States.
That's right, but that's the thing, that by going along with U.S. foreign policy in Libya and in Syria, Europe is the one that has suffered. Because it's Europe that actually helped the United States create instability and chaos in Libya and Syria, which then spilled over into this mass migration into Europe, which of course helped create the populist movement. So therefore, NATO is actually working directly contrary to any European interest. I mean, it's just so obvious. It's just amazing that the European leaders, and this is clearly the leaders, don't see it, and they prefer to go along with this. And now, with all these activists, these interventionists and foreign policy activists who are going to come in with Biden, it's going to be back to the same thing. They've already promised that they're going to restart the Syrian war. So,
yeah, and what happens is that people don't understand. Is that when the Libyan state collapsed, it became a magnet for people that wanted to migrate to Europe. So it's not like if you can get to Europe, get to Libya. Or when the structures of the Syrian state were under threat, people, you know, and we're looking at people all around the region. They get there, and then it's a conduit to go up to Turkey, because, you know, Erdogan is going to be a real asshole every step of the way, you know, and he's going to open the gate. Okay, and these places become so unstable and lack of any kind of rule of law. It pulls these people in, and then they can vault their way into the European Union. It was a few years ago. I saw this video. I think it was in either the south of France or the south of Italy, but it was a resort place, okay? And all of a sudden, these boats started coming up and people walking onto the beach, just no control. Look, George, if I visit you in Budapest, how many metal detectors am I gonna go through? Okay, how many people are gonna pat me down? How many people are gonna look at my luggage? And then they just let people walk right off the beach? And you wonder why there's crime. You wonder why there is theft. You wonder why, you know, the healthcare system is overloaded, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, you know, entering a country like that is illegal. It's the beginning of an illegal process here. I mean, I'm mystified. I mean, is their ideology so ingrained in their brain that they can't understand that they're putting themselves at risk? No, immigration. Germany needs immigration. Absolutely, it does. It does need it for workers. But I mean, why don't you choose your workers? Okay, choose people. You got to go to. You can speak German. Okay, come on in. You can write code. Come on in. Okay. I mean, everyone thinks I'm totally against immigration. I am not. I'm for controlled immigration.
I do think that one should be very careful before one says that, makes that argument, because, you know, remember, in terms of work, yes, there are, you know, you can always bring in cheap labor. The issue is, you know, Germans will do the work if they are paid properly. I mean, when people say, "Hey, we don't have Americans to do the job," yeah, you don't have Americans who are going to do it for that ridiculously small amount of time.
George, you're absolutely right. My point, I'm glad you brought that up. My point is, there has to be a social consensus. Should we have immigration or not? And then you have to bring in the Chamber of Commerce, and you have to bring in other groups here, and you have to negotiate it. That's what I'm getting at. If there's going to be immigration, if it's deemed necessary, it should be done to further the national interest and not the expense of working people. So I'm glad you clarified that.
No, yeah, exactly. And that's why all these arguments in favor of immigration are so ridiculous. I mean, they always make that point. Oh, well, you know, these are all sorts of jobs that Germans or British or the French won't do. Well, of course they'll do them. Anyone will do any job, no matter how dirty, filthy, and unpalatable, as long as they're paid for it. If you're paid, I mean, there are people who collect trash. There are people who work down in the sewer. You know, what can be worse than that? Well, they also happen to be well-paid jobs. So people will do them. But if you're only going to pay them whatever, $5 an hour, no, they're not going to do it.
Oh, the people that they clean the windows on skyscrapers,
Right.
they're paid 6 figures a year.
That's right. That's right. Because it's a dangerous job. It's a scary job. Who could do that? Yeah.
Yeah, but just the point is here is that and to kind of go full circle is that for this congratulating Biden here, it shows a lack of imagination and a lack of really taking your own self-interest seriously. I mean, it's become a very, very bad habit of keeping this antiquated Washington consensus together, because the world is moving on. And I think so many Europeans and Americans don't understand how the world is changing so rapidly around them, and it's going to leave them behind.
I think so. I think so too. And as you say, we've gone full circle, and one has to then mention that Russia, and though it has been the subject to nasty sneers, you mentioned Michael McFaul, but there have been plenty of other people on Twitter. Oh, Russia isn't recognizing the result because of its friend Trump, and so on and so forth. But of course, Russia is behaving in the absolutely appropriate way in which other countries have always behaved. Namely, they're not going to extend their congratulations until the process of the transfer of power has been agreed upon and settled. While the election contest is still taking place, you don't extend your congratulations. So they're not saying we're for Trump or we're against Biden. They're just saying we are going to wait for the American constitutional process to play itself out. This is so horrific, shocking.
Yeah, but I mean, whatever Russia says in this situation, damned if you do, damned if you don't. Look, they're leaning in, they're meddling. Okay, I mean,
right. But of course, it's precisely by recognizing an election result before the election is over is when you're meddling and you're interfering. What Macron and Merkel and Boris Johnson did was meddling. They were meddling inside an internal American process. That's meddling. When you say we're staying out of it until you've settled it, that's exactly what non-meddling is.
I think when it comes to the European leaders that you just mentioned here, I think part of it is just personal spite. Okay, it's just immaturity. It's their opportunity to take a whack at Trump like everybody else. Okay, wow, that really takes a lot of sophistication, doesn't it? Okay, it takes a lot of courage, doesn't it? Okay, it's really childish, and it just again, there's a lack of ability to. I mean, if you're for the rule of law, then be for the rule of law. If you're not going to meddle, don't meddle. Okay. Right. Again, exactly. It's just there's hypocrisy that stinks to high heaven.
It does stink, and particularly when these creatures who we just mentioned base their claims entirely on what the media have claimed. I mean, the only people who are claiming that the election is over, Biden has won, Trump has lost, are the media. It's CNN, Fox News, ABC, CBS that have called the election. No one else has. I mean, the votes haven't, the votes are still being counted. The votes haven't been certified. The state legislatures haven't selected the electors. The US House of Representatives hasn't seated the electors. None of that has taken place. The only thing is CNN says Biden has won and Biden is the new president. So for them to rush in and say, yeah, here's our congratulations, it's just so
well, you know what this is?
Irresponsible.
You know what this is? It's the next impeachment of Donald Trump by different means. Mm-hmm. That's what it is. Okay, it's exactly what it is. Okay, the first impeachment was based on nothing, and this impeachment process is based on incomplete data. Okay, and even without the decision of the law of the legal system to the veracity of these claims of fraud and other things here. Again, just getting ahead of your skis. And you know what, George? These people just have a long history of getting it wrong. And that's these people.
That's right, and that's a very interesting question because, of course, if within the next couple of weeks the courts actually say, there's actually quite serious charges here. We really need to do an audit of, let's say, just the Pennsylvania election. Remember, just look at the situation today. Trump has a very good shot at winning Arizona, North Carolina, Georgia. Pennsylvania then is all that really he needs to put him over the top. And if this, and we already have the U.S. Supreme Court that is taking an active interest in what's going on in Pennsylvania, and if there's an audit of the vote in Pennsylvania, you know, Macron, Merkel, and Johnson could start to look very silly in about 10 days' time.
They always do. They always do. You know, I mean,
nothing new there.
Yeah, I mean, and the media myth about the Trump presidency is the walls are caving in. Okay, and they always were caving in for 4 years. Okay. No, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I haven't. Trump's been remarkably quiet on Twitter, apparently. So that's a good sign.
Well, he's also being censored. He's being censored on Twitter. I mean, Twitter is actually, you know, making all these little comments on his tweets, which is itself outrageous, since it should be doing that on Biden's tweets by saying, when he says, "Hey, I am the president," you know, then it should be saying, "Yeah, not so fast. We have a whole proceeding to go through." But no, of course, Twitter isn't doing that. You
know, George, what's happening before our eyes is the complete collapse of trust in institutions. I mean, it's, you know, I've been warning this ever since Trump came on the scene. And you know, I mean, when we had in 2016, I think was it Jeffrey Goldberg? This, you know, we have to treat the truth differently. I mean, there's too much at stake here. I might be wrong on that, but I mean, journalists saying that they would have to suspend journalistic rules. I mean, now they're not only just suspended, people don't even remember what they are. Right. And I'll tell you, you know, there's going to be like 70 million people saying, "What are you talking about?" Right. And this is really nasty business that they're peddling right now. I don't think they have any idea the mistrust that they sow so deep into people. And once you lose trust, as we all know, it's really difficult to regain it. And it has to be a Herculean effort to regain it. But they don't care, because they look down upon these people. If you don't agree with this, then your opinion isn't worth anything anyway. That's their mantra. That's it. That's exactly right. I mean, remember, in 1960, it's almost certainly the case that JFK, the election was stolen from Nixon in favor of JFK. We know what happened in Illinois. We know what happened in Texas. There was almost theft. To this day, people think that the 2000 election was actually won by Al Gore. I mean, a lot of people are convinced by that. But somehow, because of 9/11 attacks, which took place, you know, only a few months later, it was really largely forgotten. But those were different times. Now there is just so much anger and resentment and suspicion amongst the populace that these 70 million people who voted for Trump if they think that this election was stolen from them, this is going to be very serious. You know, this is in 1960 when Richard Nixon just went away and accepted his loss. They are not going to go away and just simply accept it. Okay, well, it got stolen from us. It got stolen. Okay, let's move on to what the latest celebrity is doing. It's not going to happen like that. Not going to happen. Not going to happen at all. When you consider the number of people that participated in this election, if it was like 38% or 42%, no, we're looking at the mid 60s. That is the highest in our lifetime, George, I think, and the highest. So a lot of people, they're told, participate, your voice needs to be heard, everyone's voices need to be heard. This is what they were saying, go out and vote. Well, they did. And under the conditions of a pandemic. Okay, under conditions of social distancing and all the rest of it here. And they did. So, I mean, they're not going to just say, "Oh, okay, well, next time we'll get them." No, because a lot of them, see, what makes this, no other election in our lifetime did so many voters believe it was existential, that this is an existential moment. Right. All right. 2016, for many, many people, that was the case. Because it was the last chance to push back against this ideology, and they've been their worst nightmares have been confirmed in 2020. Is that if they want to determine the outcome, they're going to get it over the voters' will. That is their perception. That's exactly right. And you would have thought that these people who are the heads of government in Europe
would have had some understanding of this. They would have known that don't jump the gun, don't jump into this, because this is a very fraught election. It is very tense. There's going to be an awful lot of people who will get very agitated if they think that this election has been stolen from them. Stay out. Don't make things worse. But I guess the guys who got into the war in Libya, somebody who was actually creating stability, actually controlling the immigration flow into Europe. I mean, the guys who got involved in that really have very little common sense. Yeah, that's exactly what you would expect them to do. Oh, great! Biden's here. The good old days are here. NATO's here. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what do you think is going to be? Hang on. What do you think the reaction is going to be if Trump wins with these leaders? What
well, exactly. That's exactly it. And I was in fact thinking about that, because one of the people who has also extended his congratulations to Biden is Bibi Netanyahu. Now, Trump has done an awful lot of favors for Bibi over the years. An annexation of the Golan Heights, and all the rest, Jerusalem, and so on. So if Trump does turn out to have won, I think he's going to go after Bibi. I mean, he won't forget this. And then we might actually even get an even-handed policy in the Middle East. Maybe we should take a look at Palestinian rights. For the first time in 70 years, America will start to look at, maybe the Palestinians do have a point.
Well, you know what they say about getting the last laugh. So, okay. Again, we like to have levity on our podcast here, but the most important thing is that all the votes need to be counted. All the legal votes need to be counted. There is a legal infrastructure to deal with it. Lawyers are on the case, and it should be, it's not, but it should be a bipartisan thing to get this done and dusted. And then there'll be a consent. People will be able to say, "My president." Okay, we're not there yet, and I worry that we won't.
No, exactly right. We're very, very far from that. All right. Well, thank you very much, Peter. We will, as always, be keeping our laser-like focus on at the activities surrounding this election during the coming week. Thank you very much, everybody. And remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.